I'd lost track of time. Have you ever done that? I looked at the clock and went, ah! And I grabbed my keys, and my next appointment was starting in less than 30 minutes, and I needed to drive halfway across town. Well, I jumped in my car and headed down the freeway, still feeling scattered, and all of a sudden, as I passed the exit, I noticed some flashing lights. Well, pretty soon, the traffic slowed, and then it stopped, and the freeway became a parking lot. There was no way I was going to make my appointment. If I'd been paying closer attention, I would have noticed those flashing lights. You know, in our marriage, sometimes there are those flashing lights. We don't always pay attention to them, do we? But they're blinking for a reason, to try to help us understand. Well, let's look at a couple. This is an imaginary couple who is facing some flashing lights, not really sure what to do about it. And I'm going to call them Stan and Anita. They're sitting in a counselor's office. And the counselor looks at them and says, so how did your relationship get to this place? Well, the first one to speak up was Anita. She just blurted out, he's never home anymore. Between working late and spending time with his friends, I never see him. He doesn't care what happens at home. I'm left to take care of everything. Maybe he'll show up for one of the kids' activities. Maybe he won't. And I feel like all he wants is a cook, a house cleaner, and a babysitter. Is it too much to ask for some support? Well, Stan's glaring at Anita. That's not true. As soon as I walk in the door, you dump everything on me. It seems like I can't do anything right, no matter how hard I try. After you dump your daily complaints, you find some reason to leave the house and expect me to handle the kids and everything else. Well, who wants to come home to that? Frankly, it's easier to stay at work or to hang out with my friends. They don't criticize everything I do. Well, let's look at some of these flashing lights in this conversation. The first one is busyness. Anita deals with kid stuff all day long. If she also works a job from home or outside the home, she feels the added pressure to balance it all well, which is a lie. We can't balance things. And this isn't what she thought her life would be like. She loves the kids, but wonders when she's going to get to pursue her other dreams. She remembers when she and Stan used to enjoy quiet evenings together, talking about anything and everything that came to their minds. And she misses that time. She misses him. She doesn't know how to tell him. Because most of the time when Stan comes home, he seems to be on edge. Anita feels overwhelmed and abandoned. Stan is working really hard to provide for his growing family and to meet the expectations of his boss. Growing up, Stan's dad often worked 12-hour days, so in Stan's mind, this is normal. Well, all of this weight and the financial responsibility is bearing down on Stan to the point that he doesn't always sleep every night. And he's wondering how they're going to pay their credit card bills. They've had a rash of recent car repairs. And he's also trying to keep his employer happy, who seems to be very demanding. Recently, there's been a rash of layoffs at his job, and Stan just feels really insecure. He remembers when he would share all of these things with Anita, but right now, he's not sure he can because he's afraid she's going to blame him for this recent rash of abnormal bills and the problems at work, and that he's not meeting the needs in their home. Stan feels like he's carrying around the weight of the world on his shoulders. Well, here's a suggestion to heed this flashing light. All relationships face seasons that go at various paces. When you add kids into the blend, and if you're caring for aging parents or supporting a special needs family member, life seems to pour on more than you can handle. It's time to acknowledge that. Here's the second flashing light. Feeling unappreciated. Did you hear that in that just little snippet of the story with Anita and Stan? Anita's trying to get Stan's attention, so when he walks in the door, she just verbally vomits on him. He responds to this verbal assault by withdrawing or even staying away as long as possible. In the process, she feels unheard and overwhelmed, and Stan feels overwhelmed and unappreciated. Well, Anita's response to this is to nag him more. Well, here's a suggestion to deal with this flashing light. Both Stan and Anita struggle to communicate their needs to each other. In Galatians 6:2, it tells us to share each other's burdens. It doesn't say in this verse to take them. It says to share them. It means that we're both going to be lifting the same burden at the same time. So here's an intentional way that you can do this. If this is something you're struggling with, find a time each day to talk with each other, to decompress, to share what's going on, not in an accusatory way, but in a way of, here's what I'm dealing with. I just need you to know, and I just need your support. I don't need you to fix it. I need you to support it. And then they can navigate through it. Even during that time, you can talk about what's coming up the next day. So if there's multiple places, especially with children, and you have to have them in various places, you can plan out who's going to do what and share the burden. That way, both of you feel seen, supported, and respected. Well, the third flashing light that we see in that short story is misplaced frustrations. This struggle often sneaks up on us, and it's like that rapidly approaching exit that I did not pay attention to. So rather than anticipate when Stan was coming home, Anita lies in wait to pounce on him, dump her frustrations and worries, and expect him to handle her overwhelm from the day's events the moment he walks in the door. It's like she put in her time with the family responsibilities, and now it's his turn. Stan, instead of tapping into Anita's wisdom and insight about his financial concerns and work struggles, pushes her away, thinks he has to keep doing everything by himself in his own strength with his own understanding. He makes an assumption that Anita would not handle it well. Well, here's a suggestion to deal with this flashing light. Identify your core frustrations. What really has you frustrated? What if before your husband walks in the door, you take some time and identify what's going on? You might need to pray or grab your journal and write some things out. How could you figure out how to convey the things that you really need your husband's help with, but not as he walks in the door? Remember, just previously we mentioned, schedule that time every day where you two can decompress together and talk through the day's activities and lean on and use each other's strengths and insights to help you deal with it. Or your husband when he's driving home. If he's got 20, 30 minutes or however long his commute is, there's a place on that he dumps all of his frustrations as he's driving home from work. He thinks about all the things, he processes through them, he deals with the emotions related to them, but every time he comes to this spot in the road, he just mentally dumps everything. Trust me, they'll be there for him to pick up on his way back to work the next morning. One way he could help with the tension at home is instead of working longer hours, he and Anita could decide when would it benefit him to come home. He can schedule that time, and then as he's leaving, he can send her a text message or place a phone call and say, hey, I'm on my way home. Is there anything you need me to pick up on the way? Well, these flashing lights grab our attention. At least they're supposed to, unless you're like me and you're not paying attention. Sometimes we are so caught up in the other things we're doing, we miss those flashing lights. But when it happens, it's not a disaster. It's an opportunity to remember to slow down, pause, and maybe even stop. Gather your thoughts, listen, breathe, and observe what's happening. Building a healthy relationship depends on both people heeding these flashing lights and investing in the resolution. Well, if you're struggling in your marriage with a struggle with porn use or some sort of betrayal trauma, and you are looking at these flashing lights and you have no idea how to wrestle them down or resolve them, I'd love to talk with you. Just hop on over to KirstenDSamuel.com and click the blue button. Let's talk. It would be an honor and privilege to help you find ways to heed these flashing lights and resolve them.